According to figures from rights group Iraq Body Count, more than 2,100 Iraqis have been killed so far this year, including 700 Iraqis killed in April. Now, Iraq remains deeply divided along sectarian lines. The minority Sunnis feel politically marginalized since the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. Shiites represent a majority of Iraqis and dominate the government. And Kurds are an ethnic minority that control a region of northeastern Iraq. Now, amid some of the worst violence in years, some observers are murmuring about the prospect of a possible sectarian civil war in Iraq. So let's bring in Fawaz Gerges, director of the Middle East Center at the London School of Economics. We've seen a number of attacks in different cities today. Talk us through how the sectarian lines are drawn in Iraq.
Atika, as you said, Iraq now stands on the brink of all-out communal strife between the dominant Shiite government of Nour al-Maliki and the Sunni minority. Today, for example, almost 70 Iraqi Shiites were killed, in particular in Shiite areas. In al-Basra, this is a Shiite city, in Baghdad as well. Most of those killed, almost 10 car bombings, targeted Shiite communities both in Baghdad and in Basra. The reality is, Iraq now is deeply divided along sectarian lines. So you have the Shiite areas. Shiite represent about 65% of the populations. And of course, you have the Sunni areas, Ramadi and Haditha, which is borders Syria. The Arab Sunnis in Iraq represents about 20–25%. So essentially now, more and more Iraqis are divided along communal and sectarian lines, and the attacks in the last few weeks in particular have targeted holy places, both Sunnis and Shiites. Basically, there are elements in Iraq that are stoking the flames of all-out sectarian strife, like what happened after the American invasion of Iraq in 2006, 2007.
Yeah, an extremely inflammable situation. But as you pointed out earlier when we were talking, a sectarian conflict, but also a political one. Can you tell us more about the political dimensions here?
Atika, I think it would be misleading to say that this is a sectarian strife. It's an essentially political crisis. You have a severe political crisis. The government of Nour al-Maliki does not appreciate the gravity of the political crisis. You have a dominant Shiite community after the toppling of Saddam Hussein. You have a Sunni minority, feels marginalized. It's not really being included in the government. And the reality is you need political reforms. You need to reform the judicial system. You need to bring in the marginalized Sunni community in order to prevent the descending Iraq into all-out conflict.
And we're talking Iraq here, a key piece of the regional puzzle sandwich between Syria and Iran, where we're already seeing conflict in Syria. How does Iraq then play into what's happening in both countries?
I think the reality is you cannot understand what's happening in Iraq without understanding the conflict in Syria. The conflict in neighboring Syria basically has exacerbated both the political crisis in Iraq and also the sectarian crisis. Because the Syrian conflict, unfortunately, Atika, has also basically mutated, taken a sectarian turn, and Iraqis, both Sunnis and Shiites, are divided along sectarian and ideological lines. So you have Syria on the one hand, you have Iran on the other hand. The Sunni Arab community in this particular areas believes that Iran is intervening in Iraq and basically having the upper hand. And of course, the Shiite community believe that basically the opposition inside Syria will turn Syria into a Sunni-dominated state, would embolden the Sunni community. So really what you have in Iraq today is basically multiple conflicts collapsed in one, and the crisis in Syria is exacerbating an essentially political and sectarian crisis as well.
Yeah, a very complex and dangerous situation. Thank you very much for walking it through for us. Fawaz Gerges from the Middle East Center at the London School of Economics.